Your world didn't fall apart by accident. It fell apart because something inside you refused to remain asleep. The job you lost, the relationship that broke, the dreams that collapsed. They weren't punishments. They were whispers from your soul, shaking the illusion you were never meant to keep. There is a moment, a sacred rupture in time, where everything you thought you were begins to dissolve. This moment feels like destruction, but in truth, it is initiation. Most people call it crisis, but the soul that calls it awakening. You're not just losing things, you're shedding layers, identities, masks, beliefs that were never truly yours to begin with. Before the awakening begins, your life becomes too small to hold your spirit, and so it breaks, not to punish you, but to free you. We are taught to fear collapse, to see endings as failures, but in the ancient schools of mystery, collapse was sacred. It was the gate through which the initiate would pass, to remember who they were before the world told them otherwise. They don't tell you this, because if you knew the pain had a purpose, you wouldn't run, you'd go deeper. And this is the truth they hid. You chose this life, with all its fractures and fires, because your soul remembered something your mind forgot. You came here to wake up. But waking up is violent to the ego. It shatters false timelines. It dissolves attachments. It calls you into a truth so deep, it can't be spoken, only lived. What if your breakdown wasn't the end, but a coded message from your higher self? What if the pieces falling were never meant to be held? This video is not for those seeking comfort. It is for those whose comfort has already been burned away. For those standing in the ruins, asking why. And I'll tell you why. Because the old you could never walk the path you came here to walk. Because the illusion had to be shaken, so the sacred could be remembered. Because before the awakening, everything must fall. Blavatsky wrote that the soul carries hidden instructions, imprints, codes, vibrations that will one day activate. And when they do, nothing in the outer world will make sense anymore, because the inner world is rising. If you're watching this now, it's not by mistake. It's because your soul is already stirring, already questioning, already remembering. And this is your moment, not to go back and not to rebuild what collapsed, but to listen to what the pain is trying to tell you. Because when everything breaks, it's not the end, it's the beginning of you. Are you ready to remember what they tried so hard to make you forget? Pause here, take a breath. This is not a story you're watching, it's your own return, and it begins with the fall. Gauti, now tell me, have you ever felt your life falling apart but something deep inside whispered, this isn't the end? Share it in the comments. Your experience might awaken someone else. They never told you this, but your soul encoded signs in your path that only chaos could activate. You see, the soul does not awaken through comfort. It awakens through friction, through dissonance, through the ache of being out of alignment. That sinking feeling, that haunting emptiness, that strange knowing that something's off even if everything looks fine. That is the whisper of your higher self. Most people ignore it. They numb it, suppress it, run from it, until life explodes. And then they call it a crisis. But it's not a crisis. It's an invitation. Before the awakening, the soul will often sabotage everything that no longer resonates. Not because it wants to hurt you, but because it's time to remember who you are beneath the noise. Let me ask you, have you ever felt like you were living someone else's life? Wearing a mask that no longer fits, pursuing dreams that don't feel like yours, trapped in roles, patterns, or relationships that suffocate your spirit? That's not failure, that's a sign. According to ancient mystics, the soul speaks in symbols, and one of its loudest symbols is collapse. Not because you did something wrong, but because the old structure couldn't hold your light anymore. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Collapse brings the unconscious to the surface. The pain, the fear, the shadows, all rise not to punish, but to be seen, to be felt, to be integrated. This is the truth no one tells you. Awakening doesn't always look like light. Sometimes it looks like everything falling apart. And that's the code. The collapse is not random, it is sacred. It is tailored to pierce the illusion you still cling to. Your soul is not cruel, but it is precise. It knows what must be stripped in order for the real you to emerge. So the job ends. The betrayal happens. The future you imagined dissolves. not to destroy you, but to unveil you. Do you feel that now? The sense that everything you once built no longer holds the same meaning? That's not burnout. It's a signal. You are entering a sacred dismantling. This is where most people retreat. They try to rebuild the same life, patch the illusion, return to normal. But there is no normal after the soul has spoken. There is only truth, and truth demands space. That's why the collapse comes first. To clear the path, to make room, to awaken the voice you've been silencing. Blavatsky taught that initiation begins with rupture, with the loss of form. Because only when the false self breaks can the soul rise, and now you understand that the moment your world started to fall was not the beginning of your end. It was the precise moment your real journey began. Not everyone sees it. Some run back into the illusion, others drown in the pain. But those who listen, those who sit in the ashes and ask, "What is this teaching me?" they are the ones who begin to awaken. And you're here, which means you've already begun. Your soul remembered, even if your mind doesn't fully understand yet. So let me ask you something. When things started to fall apart in your life, what truth did you finally see? Comment below. The truth you saw could be the mirror someone else needs. There is a moment in every soul's journey when reality begins to tremble. Not gently, but as if an invisible thread that held everything together suddenly snaps. The job that once gave you purpose, the relationship that once felt like home, the dreams you once pursued with passion, all begin to fall away, and it feels like betrayal. But it's not life betraying you. It's your soul calling you back, calling you out of the illusion, out of the contract you made with comfort, and into the fire of transformation. There is a forgotten truth that few dare to speak. Your life must fall apart so your soul can rise. You see, before your awakening, you were held together by a web of identities you didn't choose, beliefs passed down through bloodlines, fears absorbed from society, rules you agreed to out of survival, not alignment. But the soul is never silent for long, and when it begins to stir, the illusion must crack. Blavatsky once wrote, "The essence of truth is what is, not what is believed." The soul cannot be caged by beliefs that are not its own. So if you're feeling like your world is falling apart, if everything you once trusted is dissolving, if your goals suddenly feel hollow and your path invisible, it may be the greatest sign that your soul is remembering. This is not destruction. This is sacred dismantling. And yes, it hurts. The ego will scream. The heart will ache. The mind will try to rebuild the ruins, quickly, desperately. But what if the ruins are exactly what was needed? What if the breakdown is the doorway? It's easy to confuse spiritual awakening with light and bliss. But in truth, awakening begins with shadow. Not because you are being punished, but because you are being purified. Because the house your soul built in another lifetime may no longer fit the lessons of this one. This is the part of the journey most people resist. They pray for awakening but curse the collapse. They ask for purpose, then run from the void. But you are still here. You're listening, which means you already feel the whisper in your bones. You already know that this collapse is not the end, but the threshold. Carl Jung once said, "In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order." The universe is not tearing you down, it is reorganizing you, reordering your soul's path so that what's false can fall, and what's real can finally breathe. But to receive the new, you must make room. To rise, something must fall. The lie we were told is that breakdown is failure. The truth is, breakdown is initiation. So if your life feels like it's unraveling, if your plans aren't working, if you're more confused than ever before, it's okay, it's sacred. It means something deeper is happening beneath the surface. Don't rush to fix it. Don't patch the cracks. Don't numb the ache. Feel it. Breathe with it. Let it break you open. Because the soul can only awaken in a heart that has been pierced by truth. Take a breath and ask yourself, what part of your life is falling apart right now? And what if, just what if, it's falling apart because your soul is finally breaking through? If this message stirred something in you, feel free to share it below. Sometimes, putting words to what you feel is the first step toward awakening. You're not alone. Not now. Not ever. Next, In the following block, we'll dive deeper into the sacred signs your soul leaves for you in the midst of collapse. You'll begin to see that none of this is random. It's all part of a deeper remembering. Are you ready? Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life in, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. There's a moment when your life begins whispering to you, but it doesn't use words. It uses symbols. It uses echoes. It uses strange events that repeat and emotions that don't seem to belong. And that's the first sign. 1. You begin to feel like a stranger in your own life. The food you used to love no longer nourishes you. The people you once called friends feel distant. The things that used to excite you suddenly feel hollow. It's not depression, it's detachment. Your soul loosening the threads of the identity that no longer serves your path. 2. Time begins to distort. Hours blur into moments. Moments stretch into lifetimes. You forget things you were just told. You remember things you never learned. It's as if reality is bending around you, because it is. The soul doesn't follow the clock. It follows vibration. And when awakening begins, your vibration shifts. 3. You crave silence, but not just external. You begin turning inward. The noise of the world, the constant scroll, the endless talk becomes unbearable. But not because you're escaping, because you're finally hearing something else, something ancient, something true, the voice of your soul emerging through the static. 4. Your body begins to speak louder. Old pains resurface. Tiredness comes in waves. You feel electric one day and shattered the next. These aren't random symptoms. Louise Hay taught that our emotions crystallize into the body, and during awakening, the soul begins to dissolve them. That headache, a blocked truth trying to rise. That fatigue, a lifetime of soul silence finally being felt. You are not broken, you are being rewired. 5. Dreams become messages, but not ordinary dreams. They feel vivid, sacred, often confusing. You wake up with a sense that you were somewhere else, sometimes with tears, sometimes with fire in your chest. Carl Jung called them the language of the unconscious, but the mystics called them something else. Memories from the other side. 6. Synchronicities accelerate. You see the same numbers, the same symbols. You think of someone and they call. You ask a question and a book falls open with the answer. Coincidence? No. This is the soul weaving signs through the fabric of time to remind you, you are seen, you are guided, you are not alone. 7. Emotions intensify, then clear. You cry for no reason. You feel joy and grief in the same breath. You become deeply sensitive, not as weakness, but as expansion, because to awaken is to feel everything again. Not just yours, but the collective, the ancestral, the cosmic. Your tears are not weakness, they are rivers washing away what was never truly you. If you felt any of these signs, you are not imagining them. You are not losing your mind. You are gaining your soul. And no, the world never taught us how to recognize these signs, because a fully awakened soul cannot be controlled. It cannot be manipulated. It cannot be sedated by systems that feed off your sleep. But once you begin to see it, you can never unsee. Your soul has waited lifetimes for this moment, and even if it feels chaotic, even if it feels lonely, even if it feels like the end, remember, this is the beginning. Have you felt one of these signs lately? If one of them echoed within you, let it live. You don't need to explain it, just feel it. And if you feel like sharing, you'll find echoes of yourself in others here too. In the next chapter, we'll dive into why these signs are not random, but part of an ancient cycle of spiritual evolution known by mystics for centuries, and how you can align with it, rather than resist it. Let's go deeper. There is no birth without pain, and no awakening without the collapse of illusion. Helena Blavatsky. There's a sacred irony hidden in the path of awakening. Before you rise, you fall. Before the lotus opens, it must push through mud and darkness, and before your soul can fully awaken, your life, as you knew it, must collapse, not as punishment, but as preparation. This pattern is ancient. It has names across cultures: the dark night of the soul, the great silence, the sacred collapse. But no matter the name, the truth remains. Every soul destined to awaken must pass through a breaking, because what you called your life was never truly yours. It was inherited, imposed, programmed, A collage of family fears, society's rules and survival-based beliefs stitched into a fragile identity, and awakening shatters that mask. Think of the seed. Buried underground, it decays before it sprouts. The shell must break for the essence to emerge. You are the same. That's why the relationship ends. That's why the job feels meaningless. That's why friends drift away. Or why you wake up feeling lost in a life that once made sense. The breakdown is not a failure. It's the alchemical fire. The soul speaks through destruction when you ignore the whispers. Blavatsky described this phase as the necessary disintegration of the lower self, a process where the illusions held by ego dissolve under the weight of truth. She wrote, "Man must be emptied of his personal self before the universal self can descend." Blavatsky, the voice of the silence. This isn't metaphor, it's energy. Your old vibration no longer matches your next destiny. So the universe, through your soul's own design, pulls the rug from under your feet, and you fall, but only to land where you truly belong. During this collapse, you may feel emotionally raw, existentially confused, spiritually numb one day, euphoric the next, as if nothing is real. These are symptoms of identity death, and identity death always precedes soul rebirth. This is the space where most people run. They try to rebuild the old life, rush into distractions, force new relationships to avoid the silence. But those who stay, who breathe through the ruins, who allow the fire to burn what must go, they rise, not as the person they were, but as the soul they've always been. Jung described this as the process of individuation, the journey of dissolving the false self and becoming whole. But spiritual mystics went further. They said this collapse is not a side effect of awakening. It is the awakening, the moment the soul begins to lead and the ego begins to break. So if your life is falling apart, if everything feels confusing, painful, or strangely silent, stop trying to fix it too soon. Let it break, because what breaks was never meant to last. And what remains is you, not the version molded by the world, but the essence that came before this incarnation. Everything sacred begins in silence. The womb, the cave, the cocoon. Your silence right now is sacred, even if it feels empty, even if it hurts, because in this space, you are being rewritten, realigned, remembered. This is not a crisis. It's a rite of passage. It's the soul saying, "Now, I will lead." And the more you surrender to this phase, the clearer the path becomes, not all at once, but sign by sign, breath by breath, truth by truth. If you're in the middle of this breaking, I want you to know you're not lost, you're being recalled to who you truly are. There's no map for this part of the journey, because you are the map. And in the next chapter, we'll explore the 7 inner codes that begin to activate during this sacred breaking. Clues from your soul that guide you back to yourself. Codes that cannot be faked, because they were written in you long before this life began. Are you ready to remember? All things that are visible expressions of invisible forces, the Kybalion. When your old life collapses, something ancient begins to rise, not from outside, but from within. It doesn't shout, it doesn't beg, it calls, and only those with quiet hearts can hear. There is a moment in every true awakening when you stop looking for answers and begin to feel something deeper, a sense that you're not becoming someone new, you're remembering who you've always been. This is when the soul codes begin to activate. They are not taught, they are not earned, they are not forced, they are reclaimed, etched into your energetic field before birth. They are the silent markers of your original essence. And once the false life collapses, these codes begin to shine again. Here are 7 soul codes that cannot be faked, and whose awakening marks the beginning of your return. 1. The code of sacred discomfort. You no longer resist the silence. You sit with pain, not as punishment but as passage. You understand that the soul speaks through stillness, even when it burns. 2. The code of pattern breakage. Old cycles no longer hypnotize you. You see the generational wounds, karmic loops, emotional addictions, and you stop feeding them. You realize not all suffering is necessary. Some of it is inherited, and you were born to end it. 3. The code of deep remembering. There's a knowing inside you that feels older than this life. Memories that aren't memories, dreams that feel like echoes. You don't understand it with the mind, but your soul nods in silence. 4. The code of energetic precision. You become allergic to what drains you. You sense truth without explanation. Words no longer convince you. Only vibration does. You don't need proof. You feel everything. 5. The code of sacred detachment. You let go of what once defined you, not because it wasn't beautiful, but because you feel what's coming is more real. This includes titles, relationships, identities. You detach with love, not fear. 6. The code of inner authority. You no longer outsource your truth. You hear teachings, but only follow what your soul recognizes. You stop seeking saviors, because you remember, you came to awaken yourself. 7. The code of spiritual integrity. You don't just talk light, you live it, even when no one is watching, even when the path is lonely, because your soul isn't performing, it's remembering. If you recognize these codes, even just one, then something ancient has begun to stir within you. The veil is thinning, not outside, within your own perception. And as you continue forward, you may lose many things. But you will gain one. That is everything. Yourself. The self that chose this incarnation. The self that made a deal before birth. To return, to awaken, to carry light into a world asleep in illusion. You may feel unprepared. You may feel small. But hear this now. You were encoded with everything you need, long before you forgot. This isn't the end of your journey. It's the remembrance of why you came. So if your life is breaking, if your heart is aching, if you feel lost in a world that no longer makes sense, look closer. Something sacred is rising, and that something is you. If you felt something in this message, or if even one of these soul codes resonated with you, take a deep breath and type below whatever your soul needs to release, remember, or affirm in this moment. Your words may awaken another, because this is how we begin again, together. As souls remembering a truth the world forgot. And now I ask you, not with urgency, but with depth, what part of your soul are you finally ready to reclaim?